Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Career Development Series webinar, Jumpstart Your Career in 2019, Turn Your Passion into Action. The ABA Career Development Series is a monthly webinar series that contains practical tips on job search and professional development issues for seasoned and new lawyers alike. The Career Development Series is brought to you by the ABA Career Center. The ABA Career Center offers both career development resources and a job board where you can upload your resume for employers to search and create job alerts based on your search preferences. All of this and more is accessible at ambar.org/careers. My name is Lexi Heineman, and I will be moderating today's program. And I will start by introducing our speakers, starting with Dyanna Quizon. Dyanna is a government affairs manager with the San Francisco International Airport. She provides airport-wide governmental affairs support, which includes monitoring regulatory compliance, legislation, and contracts on federal, state, and local levels. She is passionate about leading health and wellness initiatives in underrepresented communities and is currently completing her yoga teacher training certification. Our other presenter is Samorn Selim, and she is the Creative Joy Director of Career Unicorns and has successfully worked with over 1,000 clients to effectively land their dream jobs, be promoted to leadership positions, and develop a book of business. She was formerly the Director of Employer Outreach and Associate Director for Private Sector Counseling and Programs at Berkeley Law and an attorney at Manat, Phelps & Phillips. With that being said, I will turn it over to our presenters, and they will introduce the agenda.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction, Lexi. This is Samorn Selim, and I'm going to go over the program agenda at this point. So we're going to talk about why we're really passionate about bringing joy and jumpstarting your career and why 2019 is a great time to do that. We're going to also discuss common fears because we know, ourselves included, that sometimes we set a goal or an intention and then by the time February rolls around, we fall apart and it doesn't happen. And so we need to address that head on. And then we're also going to address how you create a goal hierarchy and a passion map activity so that you can really get in touch and in tune with your passion and how to make this happen for yourself. Sometimes we've gone through places in life where, we're on autopilot. So we forget to connect with what brings us passion, what brings us joy. So we're definitely going to spend some time doing that. And then we're going to go into effective strategies for actually making this happen, because that's the last stage, right? You might have some kind of dream or some kind of goal, but if you don't actually have an action plan and a strategy in taking action, it's not going to happen. So we want to set you up for success. And throughout the call, we'll also be taking questions. So if you write your questions or comments into the question box, Lexi's going to moderate that. I also want to remind all of us that this is just an hour program and we're saving about 10, 15 minutes for questions. So we're going to try to cover as much as we can, but obviously this is just the beginning. So please take this as a start to jumpstarting your career, and that there's definitely going to be more deep dive work that you should be doing to continue to be effective and to turn your passion into action. So we'll move right along to why we're passionate about jumpstarting our career. Dyanna, do you want to go first?
Sure. When I work one-on-one with people, many of them tell me they've never really thought about their goals. Yes, as attorneys or as budding attorneys, our lives have been very structured with law school, with interviews. We have those next steps in mind in terms of our short-term goals. But really, when you're thinking about where you want to see your life in future years and what you're leading to, a lot of people don't give time to think about that really thoroughly. They're too busy worrying about the day-to-day. And I've personally experienced the power of specifically taking time to sit down and write those goals out, and how that can lead to opportunity because you're actually looking out for it. Maybe some people say it's the universe making things happen for you, and other people say it's because you're actually putting it out there, and in your perception, you are seeing those opportunities that you might have glanced over before. So in my personal experience, I've seen how helpful it has been for me to find a career that I am passionate about. And I think that this is something simple that anybody can take and use it to drive their focus and their actions to what their ultimate goals are.
That's great, Dyanna. I love what you're talking about, which is, where you focus your intentions and your perspective, that's what's going to grow in your life. And I've seen that happen for me as well. In terms of myself, I grew up in a refugee family. We were really poor. We grew up on welfare and was told at a very young age that nothing is possible and why even try? You're just going to end up being a teenage mom or dead anyways. And that's really disheartening. And I think one of the things that I look back on when people ask me, well, how are you able to overcome all of that? And not only overcome all of that, but graduate from a top 10 law school like Berkeley Law School, and then work for a big law firm like Manat, Phelps and Phillips, and now launch my own successful company, Career Unicorns. It's really because I, for some reason, always held on to an intention to do my best and to have some kind of vision for hope. And maybe that first goal wasn't necessarily big. I've shared this with Lexi and Emily and Dyanna before, that in high school, my biggest goal was to graduate from high school alive, because believe it or not, many people did get shot during our riots and gang shootings at the school that I went to in Stockton, California. And to be able to work in an office that had air conditioning, primarily because Stockton is over 100 degrees during the summer. So if you didn't have air conditioning, it really was, a ball buster. So that was my first goal. And then by the time I got to the end of high school, I was able to realize that, because I did well in school, I was able to get into college, and then again in college into law school, and then on. So I think sometimes we get overwhelmed with this idea that we don't have this big dream, or we don't know what the next 20 steps are. And it doesn't have to be that way. You just have to hold on to doing the best that you want to do, and then have that next goal in mind, knowing that as you go through that journey, it will lead you to the next place. And the other thing I'd say is that sometimes we get to where our goals are, and we feel lost because we feel empty because we've achieved everything. And I think I experienced that when I got to college, and then again law school, and et cetera, throughout my career. And sometimes that could be very disheartening, disillusioning, because you think you get to that place where you checked off these boxes and that's happiness. That isn't actually the case. So now that I've been able to help myself to really channel having joy and infusing joy into my everyday, and then also being able to successfully help over 1,000 people find their dream careers and to continue to build on bringing happiness into their lives, whether they're practicing in government, in nonprofit, in private practice, or in-house. There are many examples of very happy lawyers that are out there. It's just that you have to be very intentional about finding that balance, about being in tune with what your desires are, and about taking action and being proactive to really turn your passion to action. So I'm super, super excited about our talk today.
Thank you both for sharing that. I see that the next slide is common fears. So let's start with Samorn, since Dyanna brought us up on the last slide.
Yeah, that sounds good. So for common fears, I think common fears that come up are time, money, imposter syndrome. How many of you have heard that excuse before or told yourself that before? If you have, feel free to write in the chat box, yes, me, or me too. So when I do presentations for a room, and it doesn't matter if it's the size of like 2 people to a size of 1,000, almost everybody has dealt with these fears, whether it's time, money, or imposter syndrome. So we see a lot of, yes, definitely me. Thanks for sharing. I know that it's hard to even admit that, because somebody said all 3. Yay. Because it's scary to go for your dreams. And, what I would say about time is everybody has 24 hours in a day. And one of the things that my own coaches tell me is Oprah has 24 hours in a day too, right? And it's just a kind reminder that everybody is busy, but that's on you as a professional and as somebody who's in charge of your life to really allocate where you want to spend time. So some things that people do is check their emails, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, first thing in the morning. How many of you do that? If you do that, say yes again in your comments box. I would say when I go to a live room, about 75 to 80% of the audience does that. And what happens is when you are going on Facebook, Instagram, or email first thing in the morning, your agenda is now being run by everybody else. And it's a time suck. Even for me, I don't go on very much, and I literally put a timer on for 15 minutes every time I go on social media, because otherwise 4 hours later, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to eat lunch. So that's just something to be aware of. And it might not be social media, it might be the news, it might be 90 Day Fiancé, which I have an obsession about, but I also have to curb that. So keep in mind where you're spending your time and what would you like to spend that time on instead that would make a bigger impact in your life. The second thing is money. People will say things like, well, my firm isn't paying for my bar association membership, or, my nonprofit isn't going to allow me to go to this conference. And I get that money is really tight for every organization right now. So everybody's going to be putting some really specific parameters around that. And what I would say is take a step back from that, because you invested in college, you invested in law school. All of those things cost a lot of money. I'm going to bet most of us were like me, where you didn't have parents to support you and you had to figure out how to support yourself through school. So investing in yourself is a lifetime thing. It doesn't stop just because you finish college or you finish law school. For myself, when I was launching my business, I had no clue what I was doing. And I invested at this point in the last 3 years over $100,000 just to get business training, just to get my own coaches, just to, buy my website, etc. Those are all things that you have to invest in as a professional, as a business person, or as a lawyer, or even as a law student. So keep that in mind, that as you're going through your journey of finding your passion and building your career, it will take investment, and usually it comes in time, money, or some other resources. The fortunate thing about the legal community is that for basic knowledge, like the one presentation we're doing right here, right, it's free. So you have a lot of resources like the ABA or your local bar association, where they'll have webinars or free programs, or even at your law school. So keep that in mind. But for deeper things where you're really wanting to have, a huge impact, where you want to find a job in the next 2 or 3 months, or you want to build your business in the next 6 months, which is what I wanted to do at the time when I started, it will require some kind of financial investment, and it's up to you where you want to spend that time. I think there are many things that we spend money on that we could reshift. For example, I love Barrel and Blue Bottle, but the lattes there cost $5 each time, right? And so if you calculated that every day, I could divert that money into taking some kind of seminar, going to some kind of conference. So it's just about thinking about where you spent the money and where you can refocus the money. And if it makes sense to take out a loan of some sort to reinvest in whatever it is. And the interesting thing I always hear people say is, I'm willing to pay for another PhD, MBA, or LLM, but I'm not willing to pay for, to go to a conference, or to for a bar association, or to pay a coach. And so you have to take a step back and ask yourself, what are the limiting beliefs you have around money? Because to grow, it does require some of that. And then the last thing is imposter syndrome. I would do this, but I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid that at the end of the day, if I give it my all, I'm not going to succeed anyway. And here's how it comes out. So for example, I was talking to a client who had wanted to find a job for the last 3 years, and had just reached out to me, and I asked the person, well, what have you been doing? It's like, well, I've just been really busy. So I just haven't made the time to do it, or found the time to do it. And as we uncovered deeper, the person said, you know what it is? I didn't pass the bar exam on the first try, and I didn't graduate from a top 50 law school. So I don't think that I can find a job at either in-house or at big law. So I just decided not to do it. And so that's sad to me, because it's like, oh my gosh, if your dream is to go work as, an IP attorney in government, or in-house, or at a law firm, or at a nonprofit, you should by all means figure out how to get there. There's always a possibility and a road to get there. Some paths may take longer than others, but there definitely is always a way. And so in working with that client, we were able to help her really hone down on what those limiting fears were, revamp her resume, cover letter, her interview skills, and then really work on networking. And she was able to land a job at a big law firm within 3 months of working together. And that was really, really amazing for her, and rewarding for me, because, this allowed her to really find value in herself and believe in herself that she can actually do it. Some additional thoughts, Dyanna?
No, I think those were all really great points. And one thing about common fears is we all face them. So I've always found that it's very helpful to run ideas off of people, but also remember, ultimately, you're relying on your own time, your own resources, and your own inner struggles. And so to be kind to yourself, but also realize that sometimes you need a push, and that might need to come externally. So if you have advocates or people in your life who are your constant cheerleaders, or maybe you need to create those are really helpful to help you get past those fears for yourself internally.
Thank you for adding that. You're completely right about how important it is to make those personal connections and have that support team root you on.
One thing I want to add is that if you're at a place where you feel like you don't want to invest money, which I totally get, everybody's tight on money. I'm a new mom myself, so I know you have to be careful about that. then start small, right? Maybe pay to go to a conference that's only $50. Surely we all have $50 somewhere that we can invest in going to like an all-day conference, or sign up for, the Bar Association of San Francisco or the American Bar Association, and then go to a local live event. And then hopefully there you can meet some mentors, etc. So wherever you are and whatever your challenges, know that you can always take the next step to better yourself and to help yourself get to a better place, and to be able to realize your passion, your dreams.
So we have now something that's a little bit more action-oriented in a goal hierarchy. Samorn, why don't you start us off?
Sure, I can do that. So what we're going to talk about is, what are your goals and how to prioritize your life, or your goals that it fits with your life. So when I think about a goals hierarchy, I think of a vision board and an intention setting. So a lot of times people will say, I have this goal where I want to achieve X, Y, or Z, and that gets you to a certain place. But what I would encourage all of us to do is to hold a higher intention and higher vision. And what does that mean? So for me, my intention for the year is I love to have more joy and harmony in my life. When I break that down, and Dyanna's going to lead us through that process after this, is what that means is, one, I need to cut out toxic, dramatic people from my life. And you all know you have those people. Some people you can't cut out, like, because, like their family, like your mom maybe, or your my mom always tells me the story of, like, 30 years ago, I had to travel across the ocean, or the Mekong River, so that we can get you to safety, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's told me this for 30 something years, right? But I'm not going to be able to cut her off. She's my mom, so I'm going to have to deal with that. But there are other people in your life where you have to ask yourself, what kind of things are they bringing to your life? And sometimes it may be a situation that is hard to process, because this person might be somebody that for 15, 20 years. I had an incident like this recently where somebody did something that really was not okay and was not safe for me and my family. And even though I've known this person for 15 years, I had to tell her, like, hey, I really love you and I still support you, but given the actions that you've taken, you put us at risk, and I'm now going to no longer be able to communicate with you, and being able to hold your boundaries. Some other things that I can do to bring joy into my life is do one activity that makes me laugh. So it might be something like watch Ali Wong, or it might be something like this morning where I was playing elephant with my son and doing giggles. So that's how you can use your intentions and the higher vision for your year to then help you set your goals. And so Dyanna is going to lead us through this idea of what your goals are and how to set that in the goal hierarchy.
Yeah, thank you, Samorn. So now we've dealt with, in the previous slide, getting into the mindset of addressing your fears, and now you're moving forward and you've decided to move forward. And so I took this image from Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, which I highly recommend. And she borrowed it from Pete Carroll, who is the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I am a diehard Niners fan, but I have to agree that he created a world-class institution, a football institution. So in this schematic, you see on the top goal represents your life philosophy. And according to Pete Carroll, a life philosophy is a clear, well-defined philosophy that gives you the guidelines and boundaries that keep you on track. So for me, my life goal is to help others live their passions and think independently. Yes, my career as an attorney is very fulfilling, but overall, it's because I am helping people live their lives the way that they would like to. And so all of these sub-goals below it support that. So a sub-goal of mine could have been to get a career that I love. Another sub-goal could be to practice my public speaking skills. Another sub-goal could be to get a recognition for a certain presentation. In making sure that you have this hierarchy, the goals beneath it always support the overlying philosophy, but those sub-goals may end, or they might never be completed. So it gets you past that fear of failure, or the idea that I wasted my time on that goal. If it's always serving a higher purpose, then nothing is a waste of time, because it's always you're striving forward to what really fulfills your life purpose. But first, you have to figure out for yourself what that life philosophy could be, which could be a lifetime in learning, and it could change over time. But with always keeping that overarching idea in mind, you'll always know that you're going in the right track, and that your adventure and your journey might go all over the place, but you know where you're headed. And in it has also really helped me decide which projects to say yes to and which to say no to, which I know for a lot of people is very hard. If somebody recognizes you, whether personally or professionally, if you are competent, you're going to be asked to do a lot of different things. But sometimes those things that you're being recognized for and asked to do might serve you internally as giving you praise, but it might not serve your higher goals. And so you can decide and pick and choose, which helps in the time aspect, what you want to focus your actions and energy on and which might not serve that purpose. So for instance, chairing a committee, taking on a sub project at work that's not your main duties. If it's not serving your ultimate purpose, maybe it's something you need to decide isn't going to help and that you might not want to devote your time and resources and energy to.
Yeah, that's great, Dyanna. And an example of that I'll share is that recently, I'm very supportive of refugees and undocumented person. That is my personal philosophy. I know that not everybody supports that, but having grown up with families that have been refugees, it's something that I'm very, very passionate about. I speak about it, and I do pro bono career coaching for people from those backgrounds, just because I have a very strong affinity for them. And I was asked by this person who started a new nonprofit to support refugees to do grant writing and to get money. And while I support the mission of the organization, I don't want to be a grant writer. I don't believe that, going out there and, contacting all of my contacts who are VPs at all these big companies or big law firms and asking them for money is my calling. In fact, it's something that I hate doing. I hate asking people for money. That's why I have somebody else do, my marketing, my sales for me. But what I love doing is the teaching part. So, I had to kind of let that person know, I'm so flattered and I really support your mission. I'm happy to donate money, but I'm not going to be your grant writer and I'm not going to be your executive director, basically, for free. I'm happy to come in and do a panel on how to jumpstart your career or how to find confidence when presenting, how to negotiate so that you can get a 6-figure salary or a 5-figure bonus. Those are all things that within my wheelhouse that I love doing. And it's just being able to have that candid conversation, because on the one hand, you want to thank the person, but on the other hand, you, like Dyanna said, you have to really think about, is this serving your higher goals? Is this bringing more joy and more passion and more fulfillment to your life? So if everybody could just sit up straight and put your feet on the floor. So if you're standing, feel free to do that if you have a standing desk. But you want to be grounded here, and just everybody to close their eyes. And we're just going to do a mindfulness exercise just to bring us back to our presence, because if we don't, it's going to be really hard for you to connect with your passion and your joy. So we're just going to take some deep breaths with your eyes closed. Put your right hand on your heart and your left hand on your belly, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And when you're breathing, you should notice that your belly is rising. So you're breathing through your diaphragm and not taking those short, shallow breaths through your chest. So you're breathing in through your nose deeply and out through your mouth. And that's all you're doing, just taking note of your breath, breathing in deeply and out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And on your next breath, when you're breathing in, raise your shoulders up. And when you're breathing out, lower your shoulders, let them drop. And continue to do that for a few more breaths. And as you're breathing, I want you to think about the last time you laughed. And what did you laugh about? A few more deep breaths. And when you're ready, bring your hands over your eyes and gently open them. How did that feel, Dyanna?
That felt great. Thank you, Samorn, for recentering us and refocusing us. I know, especially if you're in your office right now, sometimes we have a tendency to hunch over and close ourselves off. So now that we've opened ourselves up, this passion map activity that we're going to go through very quickly, it's only going to be a minute. It's an exercise that I've used to help define the sub-goals that I need to support my life philosophy. So once you've had that kind of thoughtfulness in deciding where you want your life to engage in, then you have to decide, okay, so how do I get there? And I do this exercise biannually at the beginning of the year, so January, so this is the perfect time to start. And then towards the middle of the year in July to look at the goals that I set for myself back in January and maybe reset, refocus, alternate, or do a different one, or continue on the same path. So your sub goals can and do change, but as long as you have a path lined out, it helps structure the day to day. So this activity asks you to take a piece of paper wherever you are, if you have one, or if you want to use your phone, you can use that as well. And without any thought to any limitations, time, money, the fears that we've discussed, ask yourself, what would your ideal life look like during these set timeframes that we set on the slide? What would you be accomplishing, obtaining? Write down those specific goals under the time frames, and we've set a timer, so we'll start that right now for a minute, and I'll talk you through while you're doing it. So you're going to be free writing every single thing that comes to your mind. Be specific without the need to be realistic or with justifications. Also, feel free to include your personal and professional goals because they are always tied together. So this mini version of an exercise I usually do, you can usually take 5 minutes to yourself to do it. And when the timer starts, it's a free flow of information that you allow yourself to really deeply connect now that we've opened ourselves, thanks to Samorn, and really tap into what we really want for our lives. So for me, 1 month could be a successful presentation. In 3 months, it could be meeting with key people in my division over coffee. A year goal could be getting a promotion or spearheading my own project that I lead. And then in 5 years, it could be becoming a division head, paying off student debt in terms of personal goals, or living in a location that really, or an environment that really supports me. So whatever you see yourself doing, being, accomplishing, achieving, give yourself that time. We've given you a minute right now, but maybe later on, or hopefully later on, you give yourself a little bit more time to really think this through deeply.
We know that's a short amount of time, but it's just, good for you to just have that time to jot down while nobody else is talking. So we'll just give you a quick minute, and then we'll move on to the next slide after the minute's up.
All right, so that was a minute.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexi. So now we want to turn to effective strategies for turning passion into action. And we want to leave a lot of time for this section because we find that that's actually the hardest part for most people. And also leave a lot of time for Q&A so that you can get your personal questions answered. So for effective strategies for turning passion to action, the first thing we want to cover is mindset. And Dyanna had covered this a bit in the beginning where she talked about it's really about your perspective. If your perspective is everything's terrible, your mind will likely lead you to that space, right? So there was a study that was done where a researcher asked people to look for red cars. All of a sudden, in that day, the number of red cars increased by 5 cars on average per person. Whereas on a day where you weren't instructed to look for a red car, tons of red cars could be driving by, but you wouldn't even notice it. The other interesting thing that they noticed in this research was that not only did people notice more red cars, they started looking at pink cars and maroon cars and counting them as red. So really feeding positive feedback to their neurosynapses in their brain and giving them that positive emotion and endorphins that they needed to continue to feel inspired. So what we want you to focus on is having what Carol Dweck, who is a professor and researcher at Stanford University, calls a growth mindset. And the growth mindset is this idea that no matter what you were born with, whatever IQ, whatever socioeconomic class, whatever educational background you have, there is always room for you to grow, and that failures and not succeeding in goals that you've set is actually part of the learning process, and that every time you do this, you are going to continue to grow and be better. Versus a fixed mindset, which is this belief that, you can't do it because you don't have that IQ, or you can't do it because you didn't go to this school, or you can't do it because you didn't work for this particular company. So that's a fixed mindset, because essentially what you're saying is there's some problems, but it's not me, it's the environment. And so when you say that, you leave yourself in a very disempowered space. So again, there's a choice here that you have to make. Are you going to be somebody who is a victim, who says, the environment's doing this to me, there's nothing I can do? Or you can say, some things are not ideal in my life right now, but I'm going to take ownership, and I'm going to look for creative ways to really allow myself to have growth and to push myself through my fears and my discomforts, and actually take actions to make this happen. So it really starts with that, because if you don't have that proactive attitude, it's going to be really hard to do anything else, because you're beating yourself up the entire time. And so, something to keep in mind is for babies, my son is 7 months old, so he's starting to learn to crawl, etc. And pretty soon he's going to have to learn to walk, right? The average number of times babies fall, take a guess. If you're on the call still, and you can comment in the comment box, take a guess of how many times a baby has to fall before they learn to walk. Most people would say something around like 50 times, 20 times, but actually the number is 300 times. So imagine if you decided, you know what, I'm good with crawling, I'm not going to walk anymore because I fell a few times and it hurts too much, what that would do to you and how you would be living your life. So that should be built in. And I think as children and as babies, we're very resilient. But somewhere along the road, as you grow up, as you become more established, as you become a lawyer or a professor or whatever your title is, we start to have a lot more fear, because the fall can feel pretty high and hard. So just keep that in mind, that no matter where you are in your life, no matter how far you are in life, whether you're feeling like you're at your best or at your worst, there's always room for growth and room for positive improvement. And the second thing that I see people do in terms of making mistakes is that you pile on all this stuff to do because you're in this place of growth, which is great. The problem is that we're already all overworked. How many of you feel like you're overworked? If you feel like you're overworked, go ahead and type in the comments box, I feel overworked, or yes. And I would say pretty much all of us feel overworked. I mean, I was just thinking about this morning. I have insomnia, so I was up at like 2:30, and I'm working away in all these projects, and I'm literally up like 20 hours a day, which gives me more time than most people, but I still don't have enough time to finish everything that I'm doing because I'm so busy. And what I would say is that when you're trying to do something big, like change a habit or reach for your higher fulfillment goal, you need to create space. And so you need to make a list of all the things that you're working on and delete them. Delete the things from your life. So I love watching 90 Day Fiancé. I know it's kind of a crazy show, but it's just like so tragic, but so addictive. But that's not going to serve my higher purpose of bringing more joy into my life, right? So I'm going to cut that out. Or if your version is Real Housewives or NBA, whatever it is, and that doesn't mean that you have to cut out entirely. It just might mean that you only watch 30 minutes once a week or something to that effect. So there's ways in which you could still do the things that you want, but not let it consume your life. Something else that we talked about earlier is social media or the news. How many times have we gone on Facebook or Instagram or watched the news, and 4 hours later, we're still like, oh my God, it's replaying the same thing, but we can't take our eyes off of it. With the government shutdown or whatever side you're on, there's just so many things to distract you. So that you can understand that there's a government shutdown, but you don't have to get the up-to-minute update from the different parties that are involved, right? So there's ways in which you can still be informed, still be contribute as a citizen that you want, but not necessarily be tied to all the drama that's going on. So create space. And the third thing is get organized. We have so many thoughts in our head. And so when I was leading you through that 1 minute exercise, we got you to focus just on your breathing in and breathing out. And that's actually meditation. So I tricked you into doing meditation because if I told you to meditate, you'd be like, I can't do it. And that's the response I gave when my meditation teacher told me to do it. But I'm proud to say I'm on day 103 of meditating every morning at 6:30 a.m. It's a challenge, but you do it. And, you know, when your mind is so busy and your monkey mind is everywhere, there's no way you can be effective in doing work, because neuroscientists have done this research that multitasking is a myth. You cannot multitask. What your brain is doing when you're typing and watching TV or talking on the phone and also writing a paper is task switching. And what studies show is every time you task switch, you're creating stress in your brain. And also it takes anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes to switch tasks. So be mindful of that by doing so, by multitasking, quote unquote, you are actually wasting a lot more time and creating a lot of stress in your life. And so it's much better to just get organized, write down all the things that you want to focus on, and write down the things that you feel are taking up all your time, write down the things that you want to fulfill, and really have it all on one sheet so you can see what it is that's consuming you and be more intentional about what you want to keep in your life and what you want to let go in your life. The next thing is so Dyanna wants to add some things. Yeah.
So I was going to talk about creating an action plan. So in the previous exercise, we wrote down the kind of goals you see and the kind of life you want to attain depending on the time frame. If we were working together in person, I would then ask you to take one of those goals, the one that you think, let's do a 3-month goal that you might have written down. Take the goal that you think would make the biggest change in your life right now. Write that down. Then around it, every specific action you would need to accomplish that goal. And so usually I do a circular cloud method, so writing those action steps around that main game changer, and then setting dates for them, or putting them in your online calendar or a paper planner if you still like using paper, so that you are keeping yourself accountable. You have an action plan in front of you and dates that you can work towards, that you're keeping yourself in check if you are accomplishing it. And when you're executing, I set myself 10 minutes in the morning to do something that goes towards that goal. It could be sending an email. It could be thinking about my day's activities. It could be planning out who I want to talk to during the week. But setting a specific time every day, if you're a night person, at night, helps keep you on that focus and reminds you to go back to that overarching goal. You're going to have so many things taking your time and attention away during the day with your day-to-day activities that it's always helpful to remember. You can even set a timer for yourself to go back and make sure you're doing one thing for you and not one thing that you need to do in order to survive. So it's a step to take towards thriving, not just surviving during the day.
And, you know, what Dyanna says about like figuring out what your main goal is that you want to work on is really important, because if you have too many things going on, you're again setting yourself up to be too busy and setting yourself up to not succeed. So finding that one big thing or even medium-sized thing that you want to focus on. And so, for example, for me, I want to start working out again. I had an emergency C-section. It took me out for a while, and I used to be somebody really active. But in talking to my physical therapist, I'm not allowed to go back and do daily method or bar method, which is what I used to do intensely. So my first step was to go for a walk, which is what I can do, but I kind of hate it. So, so the first goal I might have is, every day at 8 a.m. Or put out my walking shoes. The next day might be something like, okay, now put out my workout gear. The next day might be sleep in my workout clothes. And then the next day might be wear my shoes and go outside the front door. And then the next day might be, okay, now I'm going to go for a walk around the block. And so I built up. I actually did do that because that's how much I hated walking. But proud to say that I'm walking half an hour to an hour a day now. So it's really important that you have that goal in mind, but you also break it down into bite-sized, actionable things. And the other thing is set yourself up for success. Calendar it. If it's not on your calendar, it likely won't happen. And for somebody like myself, where I'm so busy, I have my own business, I do a lot of pro bono services, I have a baby, I actually wake up every morning and go through my calendar, and I set an alarm on my phone of when the alarm will go off so that I can do the different things that I do, because I don't have push notification on my phone because I don't want to be bothered by other people's emails, etc. And in fact, what I've also done is I've deleted email, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, any social media from my phone, because it's so easy to just click on it and be distracted. So again, you want to set yourself up for success. The other thing that I would say is that you have a goal like job searching, which is something I help a lot of people do, or developing leadership skills. These are things that you kind of hate to do, kind of the way I hate the walking. It's really important that you actually find a designated time every day in the week on the same day at the same time to set yourself up for success. So it might be every morning from 7:30 to 8:30, I will work on finding a new job, or I will work on yoga, or I will work on, becoming a better communicator and go to Toastmasters. Whatever it is, it's important to build a healthy habit out of it so that it becomes autopilot. And this is your new autopilot, not the other things that were distracting in your life before. So I think we're ready for questions now.
Wow, thank you both for really getting into depth on the last slide. I think those are all really helpful things to be thinking of, and especially being flexible about your accountability, but not, too flexible, and allowing yourself to enjoy certain things while rerouting how you channel. Going through the audience questions, I'm not seeing any about the program in particular.
Oh, there's one about career unicorns. Oh, thank you for asking that question, because I'm actually in the middle of, so there's this question, why isn't Samorn's website, careerunicorns.com, up and running? Because we're in the middle of migrating some things right now, so it's in process. If you do want the more in-depth exercise on your turning your passion into action, or as I call it, turning your career from dread to joy, you can go to the current website that's up, which is www.samornselimcoaching.com. And by the end of this month, Career Unicorns will be migrating that information into the new website. So I got to work with the techies, and I'm on their timeline as well. So thank you for asking that question. And then if you have questions that you wanted to follow up with us that you didn't want to talk about in this particular webinar, you can always find me and Dyanna on LinkedIn. There's very few Dyanna Quizons and Samorn Selims in the world, so very easy to find us, and you're welcome to connect with us there and then send us a message. One thing I will say is that I don't typically accept connections from people I don't know. So if you do want to connect via that method, please indicate that you're on this webinar and just want to connect, or you have a question. So I'm happy to do that. And then somebody said, I often feel overworked. And I'm assuming that that's probably leading you to feeling like you can't pursue your passion or your goals. Do you want to address that, Dyanna?
It's, as I said before, we all have our different priorities that we have to do in our lives to survive. And not in the drastic way of like being able to live, but just being able to get through our day-to-day priorities, whether you have a family, whether you have work requirements. But it's always good to remember that 10 to 15 minutes in the morning or at night will really help you get through the rest of the day, and to remember to bring it back to yourself. And if you're doing something small every day, I often equate it to studying for the bar. We had our lives really structured to an ultimate goal. And now that we aren't in that place where our passions are structured, everything else is, we have to remember to keep that included. And so making time for that few moments to really think about, are you on the path that will lead you to your fulfillment? You'll realize that you need to make that as a priority. And time magically opens up when you realize what you want to do, and that you make that a priority in your life.
Yeah, and I also want to add that, like, in the beginning, know that it will be hard, because anytime you come to a place where you want change, resistance will naturally come up, right? So I was listening to Oprah Super Soul Sunday about this, and there is this belief that, when you are called to your calling, whatever that calling may be, fears and all these doubts and demons will come up to the forefront as well. So there will likely be a period that first month usually where you're going to be struggling and feeling like, what's the point? And the goal is to keep on looking at your vision, keep looking at your intentions and staying the course. And what studies show is that by the time you get to the second month, that's when you start to hit your stride. So the study is interesting because that first few days you're going to get a huge rush, like, oh, I'm getting there, and then you're going to plateau or possibly crash, and that's the hardest part, right? This is true when you go work out. This is true when you trying to eat healthy. Doesn't matter what that new habit is. This is just the way the research comes out. So you have to stay the course. And what I would challenge you to do is to keep a goal of 30 days. Once you hit that 30 days, typically it starts to become really easy. And then you're finding that you're actually having a lot more time because you're not spending a lot of time and energy on beating yourself up or asking yourself, why aren't you changing your life? Or, why is this hard? It just becomes your new autopilot. And what that will do is create space and energy for you to do even more. And in other ways, if you're feeling really good about yourself, that actually helps you to stay even more energized. So I've been up since 2:30 a.m., but I feel really excited about this program, and I know that I'm going to have a full day for the rest of the day, and it's going to be amazing because I'm so energized that my energy level continues to be high because I'm focusing on things that I love and care about and that I'm passionate about, and that brings me joy. So really keep that in mind. And in the last slide that we talked about effective strategies for turning passion to action, I want to read you this quote and have it be a nice reminder, which is, your diet is not only what you eat, it's what you watch, what you listen to, what you read, the people you hang around. Be mindful of the things you put into your body, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So that's really, really important because anything that you bring into your life, you have control over that. And you can either focus on the positive things or you can focus on the negative things. You can invite positive people who are going to add value to your life, or you can invite negative people who are going to put you down or tell you can't do it. Those are choices that you have to make. And oftentimes they are uncomfortable because we don't want to ruffle feathers. But if you're trying to change your life, there are going to be things that you need to change in your life. Because as Einstein says, doing the same thing and expecting different results, now that's crazy, right? So just remind yourself that in this journey where you are ready in 2019, it's only January 11th, you want to make a big change in your life, you can totally do it. It is going to require, some moves and some decisions and some intentionality on your part. And it may result in some uncomfortable conversations or some uncomfortable decisions. But at the end of the day, you're doing what you need to do to help you to your highest calling and to allow you to fulfill your goals and desires. So I don't see any more questions. I do see from Marinella. Thank you very much for all the valuable comments. We really, really appreciate that. It's been a delight to be part of this webinar. Dyanna, you want to say anything?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to the ABA for allowing us to do a webinar like this. I know it's a little bit out of the norm of a typical webinar in a legal field, but we really think it's important that you start taking time for yourself. And in 2019, it should be about you thriving and really sitting down and taking a few moments to write it down. And I can't emphasize that more because when you write it down, it makes it concrete and makes it real. And we don't give ourselves enough time to do that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to learn about our methods and hope this helps you have a very successful and thriving 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Dyanna. So Lexi, we'll turn it away to you. I know you have some closing remarks.
Yeah, so I wanted to say a huge thank you to you both again for presenting. This is such a timely thing to be talking about, and from your comments, even I'm feeling energized and excited about it. So
Yay!
your passion shines through. Yeah, it's very, very helpful. And so again, thank you for taking the time to do this for everyone. Just as a reminder to everyone, you will get a follow-up email with a copy of today's webinar, the recording, and a copy of the handout within the next 7 business days. If you like programs like this, good news, we have some more upcoming ones. So putting social media to work for you. And your law practice is going to be our next career development series in February. And then in March, we'll talk about building your personal brand using LinkedIn and other social media platforms. For a brief overview of a practice area of law, we are going to be covering trademark law next Friday, and then also cybersecurity and environmental law are coming up. So you can stay tuned to our social media channels and our website, ambar.org/careers. We regularly post program updates there, so you can always have the latest. And then lastly, you can check out our leadership page on our website where you can meet members of the board like Samorn and everyone else who makes programs like this possible. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and we hope you have a great weekend.